Hello, I'm David Hosey from Hosey Consulting and Training. I'm here in Hawaiian shirt and shorts in 40-degree weather in November in Oregon to go over the SIG 365 XL pistol, what I've seen for it for the past 3 years, and the newer Romeo X compact sight. Hey, calm down. It's not that bad. No, it's not. No. So, today going over the 365 XL, what I think is one of the better subcompacts. Normally, if you see me, I'm with that big Walther on my hip, jeans, button-down shirt, and not a lower appendix carry. But sometimes the occasion or how you're dressing, you can't support that larger gun, or it's more difficult, and you need something smaller. Coming through my classes, I've been seeing the 365 for 3 years, and along with all of its competitions, the Springfield, the Ruger, the Smith & Wesson, the Taurus, even the Kimber, and really like this one. And it's one of the better of the bunch of the newer subcompacts with high capacity. And this, for example, 12+1 in the chamber and a 17-round spare magazine gives me 30 rounds of 9mm in a concealable package. And then, while this originally came with the Romeo Zero optic, this is a new Romeo X, which, while a bit spendy, MSRP of $400, is a huge upgrade. And I think for the RMSC shield pattern of optics, the best of the bunch. You could go back and forth with Holosun, but I like this one a lot. I'm going to talk about my experiences with this, what you can do with this, its strengths, its weaknesses, and also, since I've seen dozens of these and its competitors through my classes, really what I've been seeing with it and how people are using it. Okay, posted like almost muzzle contact work. It's got to be part of your training routine, as a lot of this kind of use is that use and working from your holster. And one-handed draw, because your other hand might be tied up on other things, like not getting your head caved in or pushing a gun out of the way. This really works well with that. It point shoots pretty well. It's kind of hard to tell on the target, but because the paper got torn up by the muzzle blast, but that's what this kind of training works for. And this is where this kind of gun can work. And you should be having some of your training doing, under professional supervision, of course. But anyway, so what this can do on this, the red dot sight here actually helped me some. And it may sound funny because some of the shot was from retention, just slapping here or low, but as I stretch out, I'm using this as a big giant ghost ring sight, and that allows a flash sight picture for me to keep that continuation of fire so I don't have to search for it, and then allows me to get some precision for the face shot there with the red dot in this. This red dot is a 2 MOA dot with a 32 MOA circle. That allows just a little bit faster acquisition. On my normal size, I use for my normal carry, I use a RMR, which just has a regular 2 MOA dot. I'm used to this, but this gives me a little bit more handrail, as I haven't trained with it as much, with that 2 MOA dot and this big window on this. I really like this big window. Let me walk forward here a little bit more and show you the stuff on this. The larger size of this, compared to the Romeo Zero that came with this originally, that I've replaced with this Romeo Xc from SIG. Big window, good solid aluminum construction, so I'm not worried about its reliability. And a huge thing, this side-mounted battery on that. That allows us to sit very low and get me a very good sight picture. Also, battery replacement, I don't have to take the whole sight off to change the battery and then have to worry about re-zero. which with the Romeo Zero I had to do a couple times, just because its battery consumption was pretty high. It could be a very bright sight when you wanted to, so bright that you could probably aim at the sun and fight it out with it. This can get as bright, but it also has a kind of shake awake momentary shut-off feature when it's not being used, and that works very well and works battery conservation. Also, compared to the Romeo Zero, where I had to reach inside and push a button and then literally tap it for brightness selection and reticle selection, this has these up and down arrows allow me to turn it on and off, adjust brightness, and change my reticle out. They're quite nice, but recessed well enough that I'm not going to push them in a holster and cause problems with it turning them on or off, or have it reset it automatically because I was leaning up against my holster up against something. The other thing with this side mounted battery is it can be mounted very low, and while I have suppressor sight heights on this, the nice SIG X-rays that are very good sights, if I had a regular sight on the front and even no sight, like on some of the older ones you have no plates, if you see these two glowing tubes in there, those are fiber optic sights that allow you to have a rear sight that will co-witness with just a low front sight here. And since this sets so low, you can do it with normal height sights and do that. All these options, I think, really make this in the RMC Shield footprint, not the full-size footprint, one of the sights to beat. The only thing that gets really close to it in features is some of the hollow sight options. And with this, right over my shoulder is Wilsonville and their SIG plant, like 15 minutes away, where this is made. So it's American made, or mostly American made. There might be one small part in it, but it's not Chinese if you want that pride of ownership. You also get some quality. I've had some zeroing issues or some other stuff with some of the HoloSuns. So far with this, it's very solid. And some of the SIG low-level optics are so-so. Their higher-level American-made stuff are very good. And I like this a lot, and I think for the RMC Shield footprint, this is one of the best options for it. But the pistol overall, really good size package. Again, I can conceal it really well. A little bit different for me doing that appendix carry rather than on my hip, like God and Jeff Cooper intended. But this works real well. We're going to go out to 30 yards for some small shots, and then 50 yards for some more body shots, and show from there. Okay, we'll keep the miss in there. 30 yards for a headshot. We'll go back for body, and then I think we'll change and go to another range and try body at further distance. But let's try 50 yards. So, 50 yards, body shots. Does take a bit more effort than it would be with my full-size Walther or a larger SIG or Glock, but if you put the effort in, you can make it work. Like we did with the intro, we're going over the 365XL and the specific SIG Romeo X compact sight with it. Really, what is this gun otherwise? It is a subcompact, high capacity concealed carry pistol, and part of the 365 family, which are smaller and larger, but it's a modular system. What do I mean by smaller and larger? Then, or it's like kind of a Goldilocks size. So here's my normal Walther that I carry, and you can see the size comparison here, where the Walther will just hide the whole thing. But this is a smaller gun. But compared to, say, your pocket pistols, such as this Ruger LCP2, it's a little bit larger then. So it gives you kind of a Goldilocks size of mix of concealability, controllability, and capacity. Especially the capacity on this. This is very well. The base magazine is 12 with 15 and 17 round magazines available. But it's quite concealable with a 12 round magazine. This is the mid-size version of that, but of that 365. I'll talk over the features of this, then we'll compare it to a lot of its competitors. I have a Hellcat here, but there's I can speak of all the others. I've seen this in classes. In fact, I've seen over a dozen of these come through my classes. And both the 365s, macros, and a lot of the XLs. And the XL is the one that has impressed me the most. What I have on this one, starting from top to bottom, is we have a red dot on it. This is a SIG Romeo X compact. It came with a Romeo 0, a plastic sight. It's better than nothing, but this is not a great sight. It's, in fact, one of the worst sights on the market. It's a bit more durable than some, but its controls and everything. The new Romeo X is a much nicer sight, better controls. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Below this, it came with, on the slide, some of the SIG X-ray sights. These are suppressor height, so they co-witness. They're tritium night sights. They are excellent. They have some smaller or larger ones on different models, but these ones are quite excellent, quite robust, work really well as backup iron sights, or just sights on their own if you didn't have a red dot on board. Next, the slide, front and rear slide serrations, quite aggressive, and you can grab them. A little bit of cut on the front here, so it'll holster just a touch better, work on it, or you could do a press check if you're more old school on that. It has a proprietary rail here on the bottom. Well, SIG at first only made the parts. Now Surefire, Streamlight, and several others make accessories that will clip onto this proprietary rail. And like I say, it's competition like this Hellcat, which actually has a small little 1913 rail. This will take everything generic and not need proprietary that specifically fits the 365 series. Going on down here, we have the takedown lever, slide release, and a safety. The safety I added, this did not come with the gun, I added aftermarket to it, actually just from SIG. It was a very easy component to do, and that goes back into the modularity of this gun. That's what's revolutionary. Magazine release is, along with these controls, all on the left-hand side, so best working for someone with a right-handed gun. You can exchange the magazine release back and forth to left and right usage, but the other controls are dominated to the left hand or a right hand shooter with their thumb. Going down with the frame, it is plastic with the 12-round magazines, which are really the revolutionary thing that SIG did here. And everyone's copying. Everyone is catching up with the 365. The Hellcat, the Tauruses, Smith & Wesson, even Kimber is playing catch up with SIG on this. And I don't think they've entirely, not all of them are good, but none of them have really caught up with the modularity and the versatility of this system. And then the trigger here is a striker fire trigger. It's got a little bit of take up here, you can see, with this flat face trigger, a little bit of mush like a normal striker, then a brake. The brake feels crisp, even though it doesn't sound like that. It sounds a little spongy. It actually is fairly crisp once it does brake. The regular 365s have a curved trigger. Anything with the X series, with the larger body, the 365XL like this, the 265X macro, and there's other versions that have come out have this flat face trigger, and that gives it just a touch more leverage. And that actually makes it, in my mind, a considerably better trigger into my feel. And it seems people seem to have less problems with the trigger just with that nearly flat face part. In fact, the Hellcat, we'll clear this out. This is a smaller Hellcat. Its trigger on the base model is actually a touch better than the base model of the 365, but the XL has that flat trigger, where the Hellcat has the same trigger on the Pro. This kind of beats the Pro for a little bit smoother recoil, and that trigger catches up with it, if that makes sense. Just with that flat face and a little bit of leverage on it. Also, it being a metal trigger compared to some of its competitors' plastic trigger, just helps the feel of it, a little bit of the crispness, reset, and everything else. That may be more of a mental component with me, but it seems to be that way. The other thing is, with it being a chassis system, is I can take it apart here, have to take the safety off to make the takedown lever work. It won't do it otherwise. And Unlike the 320, I don't pop this out, this stays in. I just drift out a pin back here with a punch, and I can change out the fire control unit, which is the serialized part for anything else. And this was the original frame that came with it. I put on a Wilson Combat frame. It's got a little bit more flare in back, a little bit more aggressive texturing, a touch more flared magwell, and I think looks a little bit more snazzy with those rays coming out on it. So that's the basics of what this is. And it's part of a whole series of guns, some larger, some smaller. But if you got this and you say, I like this, but I want the smaller gun, I want something the size of this Hellcat right here, all you have to do is get a regular 365 frame and then a 365 regular size slide. You can order those off the internet. Just take out your fire control unit, put it into your smaller one, you got it. Say I want that big macro that extends out with a longer barrel and that ported barrel that comes in it, and the larger magazine well for a bit larger hand fit. Again, pop out this fire control unit, grab a macro size frame and the longer slide, and you've got it. Or if you want that longer barrel, but even something that has this small on the grip that holds 10 rounds, you can switch that around. The safety is modular as well. I added this afterwards. I had to get a frame that fitted it, but I can take this safety out and add another one. All these parts and all I'm doing, I could do with the same fire control unit inside here that's serialized. These are just over the internet. I can mix and match both with SIG, its aftermarket partners, or whoever else that puts out something later on. I can make whatever weapon system I want with different slides, different ported barrels, different frames, add or remove safeties, have something that has an optic cut on it, or even has an optic cut that you didn't even think of, or something with different sights. All this is modular. You could do with this, different barrels. That's really what makes this, the two things that really make this work is that modularity. I can make this whatever I can want. I can mix and match this like an AR. Glocks can't quite do that. My Walthers can't do that. There's a few modular guns out there right now, but this is probably the most modular one along with the SIG 320, and I think this is done a little bit better than the 320 for its modularity, especially because the 320 you're kind of locked in on a safety, with the 365 you're not. That and that really high capacity here. Again, like I was showing out here otherwise, I have 12 in here, 1 in the chamber, and pack a 17 round magazine. I'm packing 30 rounds of 9mm. It's something considerably less than my Walther in size. But does it shoot as well? How does it compare to full-size guns, or how does it compare to a competitor's? We'll talk about in just a minute. So as I said from the beginning, there is a lot of competitors with the high-capacity subcompact market that they come out. The ones that I see most common are the Springfield Hellcat and the Smith & Wesson. I've seen a little bit of Rugers, one of the Tauruses, and one of the Kimber Makos. Reliability-wise, they all seem to be about the same. The Kimber Mako thought they changed that ejection port, and it is just a malfunction. All kinds of things that can happen with it. I don't recommend that per se. The Hellcats aren't bad, they just don't have the modularity. Smith & Wesson Rugers are okay. Taurus, it's a Taurus, which I don't entirely recommend, but the one I saw was pretty good. The trigger's a little funky because it switched between double action and single action. But nothing has this modularity. For size-wise, I'm going to compare it to a couple things right here. I have a Hellcat. This is the one that has the RMSC shield optic on it compared to and a muzzle brake on, so it's a little longer. And this is the 13 round magazine compared to the 12 round magazine. You can see it sticks out just a touch more. Width, they're about the same. That way there's a little bit more length on that, but I've seen a number of the, this is part that, this ported brake added on. I've seen several Hellcat Pros that go through and they're almost the same size there. They're so much the same size that this is the holster for this Hellcat. The SIG fits in it. To be honest, the takedown levers, this goes down, this pushes up, except for the modularity. There's really close on Springfield on the patent laws that they did on this. It's very similar. The trigger might be a little bit better on the base model of this, but it evens out with the flat trigger. Recoil-wise, the SIG is a little bit better than on recoil. The Hellcat's a touch more snappy. But size-wise, they're about the same. Oh, interesting thing, the trigger guards are slightly different. You can see that rounding. So these Hellcats will not fit into SIG holsters, but the SIG will fit into Hellcat holsters. And I think it's just that roundness in the trigger guard. Real quick thing, because you know me and gloves. A full-size work glove will barely fit in there. I can pull the trigger, oops, work reset, but it's just a bare thing. But compared to that large Walther, but this is what you get as a full-size, something designed for dirty use, and a nice carry gun, not designed for duty use. Compared to older subcompacts, before the high capacity thing was going on, this is an old Walther PPS 6-round magazine. If you look at the size of this, they're about the same length. The PPS is maybe just a touch narrower, and you can see the magazine well. This comes out just a little bit, but the regular 365 doesn't. 6-round magazine, 12-round magazine. That's really what the revolutionary was with the SIG. In part, it's the magazine well. This has got supports in there and not as thin, and working that double stack magazine that the SIG has just makes it, compared to the old subcompacts like the Shield first and second generation, maybe with the 7 and 8 round magazines. The 365 and its new competitors, if you're looking for capacity, are just much better guns and that modularity. For the number of ones that I've gone through, and I like them so much that while I had these Hellcats added on, I added a 365 on for the rentals and occasionally carry it myself. I like it that well, but 90% of the time I'm still carrying the Walther. But like I showed otherwise, there's some environments or clothing situations where this doesn't work. Things where I've seen problems with this gun is a lot of new shooters end up with this as a first gun, and it's a good gun, and that modularity, a lot of them aren't going to use that modularity or take it apart to do it. They just want a new first gun. There's two things that have a problem with that. The slide here, the springs are comparatively heavy to a lot of full-size or other guns, and I see new shooters struggling to work these slides. Also, the magazines, these are fantastic that you can hold 12 rounds into them. Or this being 15, this is much better, or say 17 here for this. This is my Walther 17 round magazine in comparison. There's a lot, they're jamming a lot of rounds into a small space with this. The problem with that is these magazines are difficult to load, and you need kind of a mag loader to do it. I can do it by hand, and I hardly, I just got so used to it, I never really had much use for mag loaders. I'm ordering some for just my clients to use, a Magluna speed loader to assist with it, because it's just so difficult to fill these mags to capacity. And they're so much more difficult than other mags. For new shooters, this can be a problem. If you're an experienced shooter, it almost can be a problem on that loading there. You got to put into it, and the 15 and 17 rounders, till I got them broken in, it was hard for me to do it, and I still need a loading tool to get the 17 rounders done. What does that mean for a first gun? It means this is going to be more difficult to operate for a new shooter. I've had several of these on the line with the Hellcat, the Mako, Smith & Wesson simultaneously, and these magazines are just a touch more difficult to do. For some new shooters, a comparison that's almost a different gun entirely, and size-wise, is this actually it's about the same size, is this Smith & Wesson Shield EZ. And it only has a single stack magazine where it holds 8 rounds of 380 or 9mm. But for a lot of new shooters, the ease of working this slide compared to the weight on this and loading the magazine just seems to work better, unless you're going to put the time in, learn the skill sets, kind of strengthen up your hands on it. I'm not putting you down and saying you can't do it, you need the easy gun, the easy gun, but there's a reason why these are made that way and sell. This is a fantastic gun, the modularity. If you're a gun guy, it's really for you. If you're a gun guy with a wife that's only going to put a little bit of time into guns, and she wants it for self-defense, but she's not going to put in that extra effort, she's going to have to put extra effort in to make this just work, how to work the slide better and how to load the magazines. And a Shield EZ might be a better solution for them. Not saying they're weak or anything else like that, or they're unable to do it. This is just simply an easier gun for a new gun owner to do. And this is a little bit more steeper thing to climb. For accuracy and shootability, they're close to the same. Thought the 380 will be a little bit less. It's that gun handling and loading the magazines and just getting used to it. Even the takedown is a touch more difficult than the EZ. And if you're someone who's looking for a brand new gun for a brand new shooter and they're not planning to really get into it, the EZ might be a better thing, even with the reduced capacity and modularity. So, if I've aggravated or built somebody up with that last commentary, that's fine. That's just how I'm seeing it with my clients. And when these are side by side with new shooters, the EZ seems to be working better and less frustrations when learning a new task. In fact, what malfunction I have seen have been shooter induced by trying to work the slide and everything else. Working the muscles on it and everything is just technique, but it takes a bit more than this, than the Shield EZ, and that's going to be just initial training and frustration. That's the only real malfunctions I've seen out of this thing. So out of a dozen guns, thousands of rounds, this one here, I don't really see malfunctions in it. It seems to eat about everything and does it well. So does this competition and the Hellcat. One last thing with this, why did I carry this all the time? It's fantastic, it's modular, 12 round with larger magazines and everything compared to my full-size Walther. Real simple reason, this is easier to shoot. This is easier to work the slide. This is easier to work the magazine release and everything. And a lot of it's simply the size of it. When you get something smaller, it's harder to shoot, it's harder to work the controls. It's a more difficult gun. For a new shooter, if you weren't worried too much about size and we're working with a fighting pistol, I recommend a larger pistol than this. It could be this Walther, it could be, if you want to do SIG, it could be the 320 Glock, whatever. Larger guns are simply easier to shoot, more accurate at distance, better to control long strings of fire. The subcompact here just doesn't have that shootability and ease of handling. What it does have is it's smaller and more easier to conceal. If you're willing to give up the compromise and conceal a larger gun, and that's what I do 90% of the time, is I'll conceal the larger gun because I really like that shootability. I'm more accurate, I'm faster, the controls are so much easier to do. It's just like an easy button compared to this. This is just a little bit harder skill set to do. And even if I'm pushing 5,000 rounds in this Walther. If I put 5,000 rounds in this, I'd still probably be shooting better than the Walther just because it's larger. A little bit better trigger, but just simply the size makes it easier. So I'm going to wrap this up. Good gun, very modular. It's really the cutting edge, and there's still a lot of future in this gun with its modularity. But it may not be the best first gun for a shooter, especially if they're just getting into things. If you're an experienced gun guy and you're tired of carrying your Glock 19, wow, this will be experience for going downsize, or even the smaller ones like the Hellcat. And with almost all these things, it's really putting the time into it and taking your gun and making it a weapon, putting the thousands of rounds in, all the draws, getting that experience all built up. Thank you for your time and consideration. Good day.